Hello, and welcome you all to another set of lectures on Indian writing in English. This time we will be looking at the key texts. I hope you have all read and listened to my lectures on Arvind Krishna Mehrotra's introduction, and I really do hope that you have a basic idea and understanding of the context in which we are talking about these texts, but we will definitely be revisiting some of the context in the upcoming lectures. But you need to understand that what we are doing in the forthcoming lectures is looking at Indian writing in English as separated into different periods. So the first period that we'll be looking at is from the beginning of Indian writing in English to 1857. As you already know, the significance of the year 1857 is the first war of Indian independence. It is kind of a landmark event. It's a watershed event that kind of distinguishes the early colonial expeditions to the complete dominance of the British rulers. So, just to revisit the context up to 1857, so in 1600, the East India Company Charter was issued by the Queen, and the first exploration into Indian subcontinent happened. And the East India Company, which came in as traders, established themselves as rulers after 1757 Battle of Plassey. Then East India Company was replaced by the British administration, and one of the major changes that happened subsequently is in the education policies, which we have looked at. Orientalist versus imperialist debate is also something that we had looked at. So, Orientalists wanted a continuation of Sanskrit or Persian education, while imperialists, while imperialists demanded an English kind of education, and our Ramohan Roy and other reformers and young Bengalis, young well-to-do Bengali middle class was also in favor of the imperialist position of imposing English education among Indians. The Hindu College was established in Kolkata in 1870 with this particular aim of imparting English education. 1835 is a landmark year, as you know, because of the Macaulay's Minute on Education. Macaulay's Minute on Education made it compulsory for English to be the medium of education. But what you don't know is about Sir Charles Wood's dispatch. You probably don't know Sir Charles Wood's dispatch, which was issued in 1854 and recommended. Wood's dispatch recommended English education for higher education, while vernacular education for the masses. So it hit a balance. Wood's dispatch hit a balance between vernacular education and English education as envisioned by Macaulay's Minutes. In 1857, because of Wood's dispatch, the universities in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras, enabled by Wood's dispatch, these universities were established in the three provinces. And in 1857, First War of Indian Independence also happened. So it is up to this period the major prose and poetry writings that will be looking at. Among early prose, we have looked at the Travels of Dean Muhammad by Dean Muhammad, which was published in 1794, which is kind of like an extended letter to an imaginary friend describing the experiences of Dean Muhammad as part of British military. Even though this is a significant text, the first major text to appear, extended text to appear in English, was written in 1803 by Kavali Venkata Boraya in Madras. It was called Account of the Jains, and it was published in 1809. But something you need to note about C.V. Boraya's text is that it was not an original English creation. It is a 28-page essay based on the information collected from a Jain priest at Mudgeri and translated by Boraya. So it is considered as a translation, but it is also a text in English by an Indian writer. In 1817, A Defense of Hindu Theism by Raja Ram Mohan Roy was published. You probably know Ram Mohan Roy as a reformer, and that is the major role that he has played, but he is also the pioneer of early prose writing in India. His significant contributions include being an editor of periodicals in English, Bengali, and Persian, three languages at the same time. He also wrote 32 original English essays, among which religious tracts are there, educational reformation demands are there, press reform demands are there, and administrative reform demands are there. With regard to press reform, he petitioned against the press regulations, which are notoriously known as Adam's gag, which limited press's freedom, vernacular press's freedom, and he demanded more freedom, arguing that freedom of the presses would enable the ruler and the ruled in equal measures. And finally, he is also notable as the first one to attempt an autobiography in English. In his last year, he wrote an autobiographical sketch of himself as prompted by his friends. Some of these people in this slide you might already be familiar with because Krishna Mohan Banerjee and Ram Gopal Ghosh, Derosius pupils, we already discussed in the previous lectures. And in Kolkata, other significant writers of prose during this period were Harish Chandra Mukherjee, Rajendra Lal Mitra, and Girish Chandra Ghosh. In Bombay, we had Bal Shastri Jambhekar, Dadoba Pandurang, and Bhavu Daji. In Madras, as we already saw, C.V. Boraiya was there. Vanelaganti Subro was there. Gazulu Lakshminarayan Suruchetty and C.V. Ramaswamy are other significant writers from Madras. Among these, C.V. Ramaswamy is notable for being the first person to write, first Indian writer in English to pen a literary biography. It is called Biographical Sketches of the Deccan Poets, which was published in 1929. Even though it is not an accomplished work of literature, it is still significant for the scope and attempt at a literary biography of 100 different poets of Deccan who wrote in Sanskrit, Tamil, and in many different in Telugu, Kannada, and different languages. In North India, literary productions were sparse during this period, but the first full-length autobiography in English by an Indian writer was from North India by someone known as Lutfullah. Autobiography of Lutfullah can be considered the first full-length autobiography by an Indian writer in English. Now we move on to the early poets of this era up to 1857. First English poem to appear among Indian writing is the C.V. Ramaswamy's translation of Vishwaguna Darshana by Arasanipala Venkata Dhavarin. So C.V. Ramaswamy, who wrote the biography of Deccan poets, also translated some of the Deccan poets into English. Vishwaguna Darshana was the first to be published in 1825, but it is a translation. So the first original Indian writer in English is of European origin. He is partly European, partly Indian. That is Henry Louis Vivian Derozio. Derozio published poems in 1827 and The Fakir of Jangira, a metrical tale and other poems in 1828. These are two books of poetry of Derozio that is published. But something that you need to note is that in 1827, Derozio was all of 18 years. He was an 18-year-old in 1827 when he published his first collection of poetry. He passed away in 1831 and at the age of 22, and he taught in the Hindu college in Benares, and he's a very vastly influential figure. He influenced a lot of the younger generation Bengali writers, as we have seen before in the previous lectures. And Derosio's contributions, Derosio's writing are the most significant of this period. Most significant poet of this period is Derosio. He was influenced definitely by British Romantics and also by Lord Byron's writings. But something fresh and original about it is the patriotic utterances that he is deeply patriotical to the Indian cause, which is very unusual for someone of a European origin in that period. And he also is the first one to integrate. He set off the trend of integrating Indian myths and legends in Indian writing in English, along with the Christian and Western myths and legends. So he referenced both Indian myths and legends and Christian myths and legends and wrote in a blend of these two things. He wrote many sonnets and some longish satires. For example, the Fakir of Jangira is a longer satire. He is considered a writer of unfulfilled promise, and since he passed away in 22, his productions could have been much more original if he had lived longer and had a longer career in writing. In 1830, the Shire or Minstrel and Other Poems by Kashi Prasad Ghosh was published. Um, it is not a wildly original work. It lacks originality, and Kashi Prasad Ghosh is also, unfortunately, not a very talented poet, so to speak. And next significant poet that we need to remember is the name of is Michael Madhusudan Dutt, who was very technically accomplished, but again lacking in originality. His poetry was largely derivative. So this is the early period. Now we will look at the second phase of Indian writing in English in the next lecture. Thank you.